what's up, gang? This is a lot of speculation and a lot of controversy that surround it. We've all heard news about the moon, but let's learn a little more today. Stick around. Advance and move forward in life on a... If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. Hit the like button on the way in, hit it on the way out. Alright, gang, let's just get right straight into this. This is crazy.
The moon. This may seem pretty strange, but let me explain. We all know the moon is this very crater-ridden planet that orbits the Earth. These craters, however, all seem to stop at a certain depth. Now, the Apollo 12 mission from NASA crashed the launch vehicle back to the moon close to a seismic sensor. And it picked up that after the landing, the moon vibrated like a bell for over an hour. That's kind of strange. So Apollo...
That's definitely the story we all heard. Let's continue.
13 repeated the experiment with a heavier object. And this time, the moon rang for 3 hours. Some say there's a metal sphere beneath the surface of the moon. Some say...
That's no moon.
That's right.
It's a space station.
That's what we all said. We all said that out of nowhere, we looked up and the moon was there. So it can't be a planet. Somebody put that there. Do you believe so? Leave a comment below.
But isn't it also strange how we didn't return to the moon ever since 1972?
He got a fact about that.
Then there's a lot of controversy about what the astronauts on the first mission to the moon actually saw. There are reports of them seeing bright lights that were following them, or even spacecraft on the moon. But to me, the weirdest thing is their press conference. So 3 weeks after they landed back on Earth, they held this press conference.
Many of us and many other people in many places have speculated on the meaning of this first landing on another body in space. Would each of you give us your estimate of what is the meaning of this to all of us?
They gonna cap, watch. See, they quiet.
I believe that what this country set out to do was something that was going to be done sooner or later. It's a beginning of a new age.
Do they seem like people who are excited that they were the first people to step on the moon?
No.
I mean, I don't want to go there, but
Hey, we all know that when they went to the moon, Buzz relayed a message and said that they're here, and they're parked, and they're just looking. He was scared out of his socks.
were they ever on the moon? And if they were, what did they see? And even 20 years later, Neil Armstrong has this quote.
There are great ideas undiscovered.
That's Neil? I never seen Neil when he got older. Let's check him out.
Breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Something seems off about the moon. I don't know if it's hollow or not, but it would be interesting. There's so many stories of other civilizations and cultures that talk about a civilization...
Hey, let me tell y'all something. Did y'all remember the dark side of the moon? The dark side of the moon.
20th, 1969. During their ascent back to the command module, Commander Charles Conrad Jr. and lunar module pilot Alan Bean released the Apollo 12 launch vehicle and crash it back to the moon.
Apollo 12, Houston, the LM is on its...
They all said that it gonged like a big empty ball, or like a empty metal ball, like that gong.
Upon impact, something very unexpected happened. The moon was said to have seismically reverberated like a bell for more than an hour.
With Apollo 12, people referred to a crash. It wasn't really a crash.
A whole hour?
Aimed the orbit of the
A whole hour, guys? That's weird.
Module.
That's real weird.
The crew separated the launch vehicle and crashed it back into the ground right close to where they had a seismograph that they had installed down there. Well, it vibrated, so it was kind of an early clue as to how solid was the surface of the moon.
What was amazing about this is that suddenly the moon began to ring like a bell.
Woo!
It did so for nearly an hour.
A whole hour?
Werner von Braun, who was then the head of NASA, decided that for Apollo 13, they were going to...
Remember that name, von Braun. We're going to get into that in another video. Operation Paperclip. We're going to talk about that.
intentionally crash a heavier portion of the rocket into the lunar surface. And when they did this, the moon rang like a gong this time for over 3 hours into a depth.
First it was an hour. Now they say it's 3 hours? This really makes you think, how hollow must it be, right?
Of over 20 miles.
This was not expected, and it still puzzles a lot of scientists today. The inference is that the moon must be hollow, because the moon is made predominantly on the surface of a kind of rock called basalt. Although...
So, let me get this clear. So basically the moon is hollow, but whoever put it there, they put stone on top of the hollow sphere?
It's a very lightweight rock. It also absorbs impact extremely well.
Oh, that's a lightweight rock. Okay.
And so, if the whole of the moon was made of that kind of rock, you wouldn't expect it to reverberate when a large...
Now that makes sense. So it can't be full of that rock. Gotcha.
Impact took place. The reason that this is played down is because the idea of the moon being hollow just contradicts what we know about physics.
That's a fact. Y'all gonna have a big problem if they run with that hypothesis, right?
In his 1966 book, Intelligent Life in the Universe, renowned scientist and astronomer Carl Sagan defined modern scholarship regarding the composition of celestial bodies throughout the cosmos.
Hold on. So, if they agree with the moon being hollow, that means it goes against everything that science has currently taught them? That's crazy.
What do you mean rusting?
The moon's rusting. It's turning red because of...
Is it a type of metal?
Yeah, there's, I think it's either copper or...
And what, it's like oxidizing or...
Yeah, the moon's oxidizing, which makes people think...
I wonder where they get all these funny looking pictures from. Is it from all the old texts and stuff that has been left behind? Leave a comment below. Let me know.
Oh,
maybe it's...
hollow.
Yeah, maybe it's a structure that's been created.
Well, it is hollow. I don't know why, but they tried.
And they agreed that their theory sounded crazy, but said not only is the moon hollow, but it's also a spacecraft that traveled here.
Wow. Wow, hold on. So they saying it has inner layers and levels?
In the distant past. All of these myths and legends, plus strange coincidences and anomalies about the moon, start to add up to a compelling theory that the moon is hollow, is artificial, and was placed here by intelligent beings long ago. He said he was excited to see the pictures on the news.
That's the controversy. That's it right there. They're saying that beings put the moon there. For what purpose? What purpose?
News and have NASA explain what they were. He was surprised when the photos never turned up. Almost immediately after landing on the moon, the Apollo 11 crew said they saw something that shook them up. Is there a reason we haven't...
Is that the same thing I'm talking about?
Returned to the moon? Sergeant Carl Wolf was working as a technician for the Air Force, and he was repairing equipment that transferred images from a lunar satellite. The photos were found in a very early release from NASA. Watch the press conference they gave when they returned. And they agreed that their theory sounded crazy, but said not only is the moon hollow,
but it's also a spacecraft that traveled here in the distant past. All of these myths and legends, plus strange coincidences and anomalies about the moon, start to add up to a compelling theory that the moon is hollow, is artificial, and was placed here by intelligent beings long ago. He said he was excited to see the pictures on the news and have NASA explain what they were. He was surprised when the photos never turned up. Almost immediately after landing on the moon, the Apollo 11 crew said they saw something that shook them up. Is there a reason we haven't returned to the moon?
When you consider the perfect geometry and placement of the moon, the shallow craters, the unique man-made elements, the locked orbit, the hollow reverberation, it becomes pretty obvious that there's a lot more to this story and the moon itself beneath the surface.
And that's a fact. We got to dive all the way in this game. We have to go all the way in.
On November 23rd of 1966, images taken by a manned moon orbiter showed no less than 6 tall structures on the moon. These images were published in the Washington Post and the LA Times, with at least one Boeing scientist claiming they were far too geometric to be natural.
And that's what they always saying. All these certain acute angles, nature doesn't make these acute angles, these straight lines, these 90-degree angles. You know what I mean?
Upon study, Soviet space engineer Alexander Abramov noted that the center of the spires are arranged precisely the same way as the apices of the 3 great pyramids in Egypt. And they cast 4 perfect 90-degree angle shadows into
That's
an
what we're
eroded
talking about,
pit
those
area.
90-degree angles.
At NASA, Dr. Farouk Elbaz, also claiming they could not be natural, revealed they were taller than any building on Earth. NASA, on the other hand, declined to investigate.
And we know that must be tall. Any building on Earth, especially those tall buildings in Dubai, we know those buildings gotta be dramatically tall. Let's keep it real.
Saying it was a trick of light and shadow. Consequentially, the subject was dropped from the media. But years later, several shots from Apollo 17 showed these same clear, right-angled structures. You may have noticed, photographs of the moon are so unclear, they look like they're from 1912.
That's a
Have
fact.
you heard of the crazy idea that the moon is an artificial satellite? So
That's
hollow
a
moon
fact.
theory is obviously the idea that the moon is hollow, but the reason people think this is because when NASA hit the moon with their lunar landers in 1969 and 1967,
But let me get this straight,
both
though.
times they recorded the moon ringing like a bell.
I'm trying to figure out, is that the only reason? Because of the ringing as a bell? There was no, like, that's why I think that something really happened and it really shook them up from coming back.
Bell because of the earthquakes that they caused. Some believers in this theory even go as far to say that the moon is an artificial satellite that was placed here strategically to...
That's crazy. We gotta dive in this.
I've been told that the moon is a machine filled with computers. It watches, observes, downloads.
Now that's crazy. We never thought about that, gang. Let's dive in. Could the moon be full of computers? Computers, gang? That's crazy. As soon as I heard that, it automatically made me think about, like, could the mainframe to a lot of networks that we using with all these quantum terabytes of information is held at? Because they also said that a drop of blood could hold that much information too. So let's look at it plasmically.
Uploads information to someone somewhere else in the universe. It has been...
Could you imagine transmitting information to something else in the universe by capturing it on the moon? That's crazy.
Used as a monitoring and manipulation station by non-humans for millions of years. I have talked with people who have worked in government intel agencies, people who would be CIA, NSA, have said, it's absolutely right.
That's
All
crazy.
craters on the moon are the same depth, and that should be simply impossible, right? The moon is our satellite and lacks an atmosphere and a strong magnetic field, unlike Earth. That's why it has been bombarded with asteroids and rocks of all sizes. One more important thing is the fact that when an object hits the ground, it leaves a crater of similar width and depth. With that in mind, the only explainable reason for moon's shallow craters would be a hard shell under the surface. This all sounds logical until we remember the Apollo 12 mission on which the crew dropped the lunar launch vehicle to the surface and the moon rang like a bell for over an hour. Does this mean the moon is hollow? Subscribe so you don't miss any other videos like that.
That's crazy.
Did you know that NASA proved that the moon is fake and was put there by aliens? Hold on, let me explain. There is evidence from NASA that the moon is hollow and is empty inside.
Now, that's all that they seem to keep releasing to us. And this is why, guys, we definitely have to keep our heads on the swivel, because they got us looking this way, they got us looking that way, but it's the same information. That's why we have to dive in.
Inside, like me. This evidence is from Apollo 12, when it went to the moon 4 months after Apollo 11. Apollo 12 left seismometers on the moon to detect if the moon had earthquakes or moonquakes. After this, NASA crashed things that they already knew the mass of into the moon and watched the seismic readings. When they observed the readings, they saw the signal going back and forth, ringing like a bell for an hour. This means there would need to be insanely huge gaps inside the surface, or as many scientists believe, the moon is hollow.
And see, the United States and all these other agencies that be traveling around doing intergalactical things, they not going to the dark side of the moon. They told them, don't you ever come back.
Later, with Apollo 17, they did a classified mission called Chapel Bell. Yeah, that's right, Bell. Make sure to follow and like for part 2.
And they agreed that their theory sounded crazy, but said not only is the moon hollow, but it's also a spacecraft that...
Hollow moon confirmation and its origin.
At that point, so when he left the room in a non-physical body, I knew that I needed to follow him in my non-physical body, my astral body. So I follow him.
Wait a minute. We're talking about astral projection now? Okay, let's see how this ties in.
And we go out and further away from the planet. And it was my first time actually astral traveling, remote viewing off the planet. I didn't even know that was possible. I remember looking back at the planet thinking how beautiful it was. And so we go farther and farther, and he's going to the moon. And so I'm like, oh, cool, we're going to have this meeting, you know, on...
Oh, snap. They're remote projecting now. So they just fly away like a bird and just keep going. Because the way she's explaining it, that's exactly how it sounds.
The moon, and instead of going to some sort of base or building on the moon, he goes right into the moon. And,
oh, let's dive in.
To my knowledge, apparently, the moon is actually hollow, and it is being used as a Galactic Federation headquarters of sorts. And this is where there were hundreds of thousands of beings who were all inside this room in the moon. And this is where I was taught about what's...
Oh, so there's a bunch of people or beings from different, like an intergalactical society going on? Wow.
Taking place on planet Earth, who the human beings are, and who the Galactic Federation was.
Galactic Federation, we just said it.
Robert Wood had a chance to talk with our Emery Smith on the Gaia show Cosmic Disclosure about what you've just said.
Wow.
A hollow moon.
There are facilities on the moon that a lot of the governments use to have meeting places just in a safe remote view area on the inner part of the moon. Now, the moon is something that various researchers and scientists have discussed in terms of it being natural versus something that was created by technology. Bob, has Bill ever spoke to you about targeting the moon as a place for remote viewing?
he would tell me about his experiences of his life, and once in a while, remote viewing would be involved, as we've discussed. But when he told me about the moon, he didn't say he got it from remote viewing. He just told me factually. He said, oh, by the way, that the moon is hollow, and it's not ours, and that somebody else put it up, and these things I had heard of before.
It seems to go back and forth with the scientists and researchers saying the moon is real, the moon is fake. We have a great video here with Bill talking about that. Let's take a look at it.
Good. Well, first of all, it's not your moon. And secondly, it's not a moon. It's a command center for a region of this part of the Milky Way galaxy. Okay? That's what it is. And it doesn't rotate. Everybody forgets the thing doesn't turn. Okay? So it's not a moon. It's not your moon. It's a command center with probably 25 to 35 different civilizations in there, all of which operate out here for this part of the Milky Way galaxy. And yes, some of those people actually are at war with each other, but they have...
The moon is still a mystery. Science hasn't been able to explain how the moon is formed. Its unusual orbit, its distance from us, its density, its composition.
That's crazy. Whoa. That's crazy. 25 to 30 civilizations all living on the inside. Wow. And they even beefing with each other, but they know how to coexist. Because maybe the way they beef with each other is not the same way we beef with each other. Beef probably ain't beef. You know what I'm saying? Beef probably is vegetables. You know what I'm saying? Wow.
Yankee Clipper, Houston. November 20th, 1969. During their ascent back to the command module, Commander Charles Conrad Jr. and Lunar Module pilot Alan Bean release the Apollo 12 launch vehicle and crash it back to the moon.
Apollo 12, Houston, the LEM is on its way down. Roger.
Upon impact, something very unexpected happened. The moon was said to have seismically reverberated like a bell for more than an hour.
With Apollo 12, people referred to a crash. It wasn't really a crash. It was a aimed deorbit of the rocket used to lift off the lunar module. And the crew separated the launch vehicle and crashed it back into the ground right close to where they had a seismograph that they had installed down there. Well, it vibrated, so it was kind of an early clue as to how solid was the surface of the moon.
What was amazing about this is that suddenly the moon began to ring like a bell and did so for nearly an hour. Dr. Werner von Braun, who was then the head of NASA, decided that for Apollo 13...
Okay, we gotta keep diving in.
I've been told that the moon is a machine.
And they agreed that their theory...
They have said that our moon is an artificial satellite. In fact, it is a spacecraft. Much of the debris on the surface was put there and was built purposely to make it look like what it isn't. Okay, it is hollow, it is metal underneath it, and it has the ability to leave our orbit under its own power.
Since the beginning of...
Okay, we just learned something new. So now, the moon is a spacecraft. The moon travels. That means somebody sent it here or remotely put it here. That's what I take.
Of time,
comment below.
There have been proof and evidence showing our planet without a moon. According to ancient studies, our real moon was blown in pieces and removed. Next, they used a giant comet. Ancestors claimed, driving the fake moon into our orbit/solar system. Researchers and spiritualists believe this is how they harvest human souls. Hiding within the surface.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We're diving in. This is where the soul catcher that's on the dark side of the moon that the Chinese found must comes into play. Let's dive in.
And on the dark side, advanced equipment, supercomputers, and more are being used to drive you towards the moonlight. The end results is you back on a prison planet being used for energy.
That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. That's how you know that the moon that we have in our solar system is not real. It's not real. Get over it.
Wow.
The surface of the moon is scarred with tens of thousands of
That's crazy.
The moon is hollow and fake.
Let's watch
The moon is hollow and fake part 2. Thanks to Missing Brad for liking last video. Like for a chance to be shown next video specified. But we do know some stuff. Number 1. We know that Chapel Bell has been going on for decades and has done many moon rings like a bell every time. Number 3. The moon has a high chance of not being naturally made years ago. This not being there one day, but then it appeared the next. And lastly, the biggest reveal is one hiding in plain sight, and it is the fact that they haven't revealed the results. This means they must have found something that they have to hide from the public, as it would shock them, such as...
I truly believe that.
Did you know that the moon is actually hollow? In the 1970s, NASA launched a rocket.
That was it.
What if the moon isn't a solid rock, but a...
Boulder tracks are seen on the moon, all over the place. And that's weird enough, but how do boulders roll for miles and then go uphill, like in this photo? And since the days of Aristotle...
Oh, shit. Okay, so now we know that boulders are going up a hill? Wow.
Astronomers have seen strange lights appear on the surface of the moon, sometimes visible with the naked eye. NASA even reported that between the years 1540 and 1967, there were 570 sightings of light flashes on the moon that couldn't be explained.
Oh, snap. So you're telling me now they had work that was going on? It was light flashes? So that probably was like miniature explosions. Sounds like miniature explosions to me. What do you think? Comment below.
Sightings of strange lights continue to this day. The Aristarchus crater was photographed in 1992, and it shows a glowing blue light, now called the Blue Gem.
Now that's one thing they know. If he's pinpointing these certain locations, this is because this is the light side of the moon, because they not getting pictures from the dark side, because the moon don't rotate. So anything that they watching, they keeping their eye on the same exact coordinate.
And this anomaly has been seen by Earth-based telescopes every few years since. Some have even speculated it's a fusion reactor. And these events of mysterious light and mist happen so frequently that there's even a name for them: transient lunar phenomena, or TLPs. Things get even more weird. There are plenty of photographs of what appear to be artificial objects on the surface of the moon. Towers that reach several miles high, pyramids, symmetrical structures. These have been photographed by astronomers, probes, even the astronauts themselves. And the biggest anomaly of all? Why haven't...
Wow, so we learned something else. We're diving in. Pyramids was on the moons. Pyramids. That's crazy. That's crazy.
We gone back to the moon. Sergeant Carl...
And those cylindrical shapes coming up for miles. Could you imagine a mile long, several miles, they said several miles, a pipe? A pipe, I wonder how round it is. Is it as round as like New York, like the Yankee Stadium, like round? That's crazy.
Wolf was working as a technician for the Air Force, and he was repairing equipment that transferred images from a lunar satellite. Those photos, according to Sergeant Wolf, showed artificial structures on the moon. what he described as a base. And this is corroborated by another technician working with Wolf. And Wolf wasn't a UFO, ET, moon theory guy. He was just a tech. He said he was excited to see the pictures on the news and have NASA explain what they were. He was surprised when the photos never turned up. The photos were found in a very early...
Yeah, we've been hearing about these missing photos a little bit.
One of the strangest things about the moon is that you cannot have a natural planetary object that is hollow. And the moon appears to be either hollow or have virtually no core. The only rational, sensible argument is that it was done artificially. The moon was made, somebody made it. The people who...
Despite it being humanity's constant companion through all of recorded time, the moon is still a mystery. Science hasn't been able to explain how the moon was formed, its unusual orbit.
And that's what I'm saying, gang. Scientists is not getting to the bottom of it. We have to dive deeper, gang. We gotta dive deeper.
Someone is watching us from the moon. On November 20th, 1969, Apollo 12 deliberately crashed the ascent stage of its lunar module on the moon's surface, but scientists got a shock of their lives as the moon rang like a bell, indicating that what we thought we knew about the moon, ancient civilizations, the moon seemed to appear out of nowhere, as if someone placed it there deliberately. But who did it? And more importantly, where are they now? Are they...
There's the moon may be hollow, besides the fact that it rang like a bell and we have seismic equipment up there, is the fact that this USGS.gov radar survey, to me, is the smoking gun that the moon is definitely hollow and there's structures beneath it.
So, in that whole sense of this, our moon being some kind of artificial construct, it's not even necessarily from our solar system. And early on, NASA actually said that. They said that the moon was older than the Earth. I mean, they came up with some...
See, this is where they start trying to take us out of the hole. We got to stay woke, gang. And now he's trying to say that the moon is older than the Earth. How could that be if they're saying that they wrote it down in the text, in the hieroglyphics, that it just got there one day from the next? This is why we got to pay attention.
Hardly from now, even the actual orbit.
Astronomer C.S. Chasopus analyzed the Orphic hymns. These are a group of writings attributed to the Greek god Orpheus. Chasopus concluded from his analysis that the Greeks of 4,000 years ago knew that the seasons were caused by the Earth's rotation around the sun, and knew that there were torrid, temperate, and cold regions on the Earth. Because of...
So is that why when they created the moon, they allowed it to not spin around on an axis to keep the temperature at a certain rate?
This, the Orphic hymns required further examination. When we do this, it appears that Orpheus, the god, knew many esoteric things about the moon. When speaking of the moon, Orpheus, the son of Apollo, relates
that it has many mountains and cities and houses in it, all who thought it to have solid ground like the earth, containing in it many large fields, champion grounds, and divine inhabitants.
Orpheus was known by his contemporaries to be called the Moon Man.
You look at the ancient tribes and the ancient accounts.
Come on now, no capping.
Of various chroniclers who talk about the time before the moon was there. And
now this is how you know we back on track now. Because now they was talking about a time when it wasn't there to a time that it was there.
You look at the Zulu accounts and many other accounts which talk of the moon in terms of being symbolically an egg. And I talked to a Zulu shaman, high shaman called Credo Mutwa, a long time ago. And I said to him, why do you symbolize the moon as an egg? And he said, because we say that it's been hollowed out, like a yolk taken out. That's why we symbolize it as an egg, which is what these Russian scientists were talking about. Then you have the Zulu legends of where the moon came from, that the Chitahuri, as they call them, the reptilian race, with two leaders called...
Okay, we're diving in. Now, we always trying to say that the reptilians have the soul catcher. they got it under control. They captured it. They got it hostage. That's what they're saying. We're trying to connect with that. We're trying to dive deeper.
Wawani and Umpanku stole the moon from the great python and...
Whoa, so he the one that... Okay.
Basically positioned it where it is. And when you look at the descriptions of Wawani and Huri, as they call them, the reptilian race, with two leaders called Wawani and Umpanku, stole the moon from the great python and basically positioned it where it is.
Okay, we're getting somewhere.
And when you look at the descriptions of Wawani and Umpanku, the descriptions correlate with the descriptions of Enlil and Enki and the Anunnaki, descriptions of a non-human race visiting Earth that come from the area of Sumer and Mesopotamia.
Okay, he's made the connection, y'all. If we learning something, hit that like button right now. If we learning, hit it right now. Sub to the channel.
Is there any ancestral evidence of a time on Earth before there was a moon? Aristotle writes that the Pelasgians lived in the area since very old times, at a time when the moon did not exist. These inhabitants of Arcadia were also known as Proselines, meaning those that were before the moon in Greek. Ovid wrote,
The Arcadians are said to have possessed their land before the birth.
So the Arcadians is the ones that was basically here before the moon. The Arcadians. Let's keep that in mind. We're going to dig deeper into the Arcadians and see exactly what they got to say. And more of the text and more of the stuff that they've been writing and coming forth with. We're going to check them out.
The Zeus and the folk is older than the moon.
Symbols were discovered on the wall of the courtyard of Colossia, a temple which was built over 15,000 years ago. Colossia, which is in Bolivia, is one of the oldest archaeological sites found in the Americas. Symbols on the wall show evidence that the moon came into orbit around the Earth thousands of years ago.
Okay, let's get it.
Moreover, the Calendar Gate, also known as the Gate of the Sun, located at the same site, provides evidence that a smaller satellite once rotated around the Earth. Some references to the time before there was a moon can also be found in the Bible. In Job 25:5, the grandeur of the Lord who makes peace in the heights is praised, and the time is mentioned before there was a moon, and it did not shine. In Psalm 72:5 it is said, Thou wast feared since the time of the sun, and before the time of the moon, a generation of generations, which is a very long time. The memory of a world without a moon lives in oral tradition among the natives of the Amazon. The Indians of the Bogota Islands in the eastern Cordilleras of Colombia relate some of their tribal memories to a time before there was a moon. In the earliest times, when the moon was not yet in the heavens, say the tribesmen of the Chipchas.
Chipchas. We gotta remember that, Chipchas.
As we have seen, the moon, our closest neighbor in space, may not be exactly what we think it is. There's serious evidence that NASA knows that the low density of the moon is evidence that it's hollow. There are also strange coincidences, like the fact that during a solar eclipse, the moon and our sun appear to be the same size. But there are many other odd aspects.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, we dove deep. We dove deep. I can't get too much deep. I ain't got too much oxygen. But guys, stick around. Hit that like button. Hit that sub button. Drop a comment. Let me know if you learned anything today. All right? We gone. Dance and move forward in life on a. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. Hit the like button on the way in. Hit it on the way out.